Today I'm cooking for my mom, Winifred, who asked me to show her how to make some vegetarian meals. Now, I know the kind of food she likes. She's always been very healthy. In fact, growing up as a kid, we never had junk food in the house. We had an organic garden in the backyard, and she was very careful to limit the amount of starch that we eat. So when she wanted some vegetarian options, I know the kind of food she likes. She likes lots of vegetables, she doesn't like heavy sauces, and she does like to finish the meal with a little something sweet. Today I'm making quinoa burgers, and I'm gonna serve it with a sweet potato and red potato salad that's tossed in a vinaigrette. I'm gonna serve it with an infused water that has apple and dill, and following it all up with a little bit of carrot cake. And we're gonna get started with the carrot cake right away. Here I have 12 ounces of carrots. You wanna peel them first. We're gonna trim off the tops and the bottoms. We're gonna shred them in the food processor. So that means you have to cut them down into the right size to fit in that food processor hopper. So my food processor, right in half does it. And now actually this whole cake is made in the food processor, so it comes together in a snap. So we're gonna stand the carrots up. We got the shredding disc in there. And you wanna pack the carrots in there so they hold each other up. Usually I can pack them all in there in one. Into a bowl they go. And now we're gonna build the cake batter right in the same food processor bowl. You don't need to wash it, but you do need to switch to the blade. For the cake batter, we're gonna start with 2/3 of a cup of sugar. We're gonna add a 1/4 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, 2 eggs, teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now for the spices, you want 3/4 teaspoon ground cinnamon. Now we're gonna add some nutmeg, and I love the nutmeg in this cake. Nutmeg and carrots is a brilliant combination. And you can buy ground nutmeg and it works pretty well here. I almost always just grate it fresh. I think it has a lovely flavor, and it's much brighter than the pre-ground stuff. So using a rasp style grater, you want about 1/4 teaspoon. With the fresh stuff, you can use a little less because it's so much more potent. Oh, you can smell it. That's good. Some vanilla, you want about 2 teaspoons of vanilla. All right, so now I'm gonna put the lid on. Gonna let this rip for about 10 seconds, let it get emulsified. All right, that looks pretty good. So now we're gonna add the shredded carrots and pulse them into the batter, about 3 pulses. Last but not least, the flour. And this is whole wheat flour, which is another reason why I love this cake, and I think my mother will love it too. She likes the whole grains. 1 1/3 cups whole wheat flour, and with the carrots and that nutmeg, it is magical. Right in the food processor it goes. Just wanna pulse this in, about 5 pulses. Don't need to overmix it. And that's it. Into the pan it goes. It's just a little 8-inch square baking pan. So you can see I have the pan already prepped with a foil sling. That just helps the cake release easily from the pan. Into the pan it goes. All right, spread it out. Pretty much spreads itself, but sometimes you gotta help it get into the corners. Into a 350-degree oven, only bakes for about 1/2 hour. All right, with that in the oven, it's time to turn our attention to the frosting. We are gonna make a cream cheese frosting, but I'm gonna cut it with a little bit of yogurt, which is another one of my mother's favorite flavors. For this, we're gonna need a clean food processor bowl and a clean blade. All right, so here I have 4 ounces of cream cheese that's softened. Break it up and add it to the food processor. We're gonna add 1/2 cup of Greek yogurt. All right, and a pinch of salt. Now we're gonna let this rip until it's nice and smooth. All right, those two are pretty well mixed together. Now we're gonna add the sugar. This is 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar. I'm gonna process this in. All right, now that was regular cream cheese. It wasn't that low-fat cream cheese or non-fat or Neufchâtel. I've worked with those different levels of fats in cream cheese before to make frostings. They turn out very soupy. So for this frosting, be sure to use the traditional full-fat stuff. You can see how soupy this is. We're just gonna let it firm up in the fridge. It takes at least half an hour, but you can do this up to a day ahead. Into the fridge this goes. All right, time to clean up a bit and get started on the quinoa burgers. Now, the quinoa burgers start with some scallions that we're gonna saute in the pot before we cook the quinoa. 4 scallions is all you need. Just gonna trim them up here. Get rid of those root ends. I like getting rid of the dry ends on the other side as well. Now, to chop them finely so they work themselves really nicely into the burger without having any big chunks, I'm gonna cut them in half, the green parts from the white parts. I'm gonna slit the white parts down through the middle, just make them a bit smaller. And back together. Now you just wanna slice them nice and thin. Make sure there's no big chunks. All right, now in these burgers, they're gonna be flavored with scallions, some spinach, and some sun-dried tomatoes. And the sun-dried tomatoes I like to use come in oil. And we're gonna use some of that oil for sauteing the scallions before we cook the quinoa. So in the bottom, I'm just gonna pour out about a tablespoon of oil into the pot. There you go, medium heat. And you want that oil to shimmer just a little bit. Let it heat up before we add the scallions. All right, that oil looks pretty good. In the scallions go. We just want to soften them. It takes about 5 minutes. While those cook, let's talk about quinoa. Quinoa to me is a fascinating grain. It comes from the Andes, and I have a cousin who is an anthropologist and she studies culinary anthropology, and she said back in the day everyone ate quinoa because it's a great source of protein and it's pretty easy to grow. So that was a cup of quinoa we need for the burgers. Now a lot of quinoa is sold pre-rinsed and that stuff's great. I still give it a rinse myself. All right, those scallions are looking good and soft. Now I'm gonna add some garlic, 4 cloves of garlic right through the garlic press into the pot. Well, that smells good. All right, now goes in the 1 cup of rinsed quinoa. And 2 cups of water. I like to use the water to rinse any quinoa off the sides of the pot. And a teaspoon of salt. So we're gonna bring it to a simmer. Up, there it is. Put the lid on, turn it down to low. Cook it for about 16 minutes, then pull it off the heat and let the quinoa steam for about 10 minutes. Love what you're watching? Take your cooking to the next level with our Essential membership. Get instant access to thousands of recipes, tips, techniques, product reviews, and step-by-step videos. Our Members app allows you to search by ingredient, set dietary preferences, and save your favorite recipes. For those looking to level up, our newest feature, ATK Classes, offers more in-depth instruction led by ATK experts, so you can gain greater confidence in the kitchen. Start your free trial by visiting the App Store or going to americastestkitchen.com/YouTube today. Oh, that cake smells so good, those spices and a little bit of sugar. Now you can see it's nice and golden brown, and when you press on it, it feels nice and cooked throughout. And if you think about it, the cake cooks from the outside to the center. So you want to feel the outside and then feel the center, and they should feel pretty consistent. Another way to test it is a toothpick or a wooden skewer, insert it into the center, should come out nice and clean, no batter. All right, so we're gonna let this cake cool in the pan about 10 minutes, then I'm gonna take it out of the pan and let it cool completely on a wire rack for about an hour before we frost it. Set it back here on the back of the stovetop. All right, time to make the quinoa burgers. Now the cool thing about these quinoa burgers is they're topped with a flavorful mix of feta with olive oil and some herbs. So this is some fresh oregano. We're gonna chop up about a half a teaspoon of fresh oregano. All right, now I'm just gonna put the oregano in a little saucepan because we're gonna heat all these flavors up with the olive oil so it really blooms their flavors. We're gonna use 1 garlic clove. You just wanna slice it thinly. Into the pan it goes. All right, we're gonna add just a few pepper flakes, about 1/8 of a teaspoon. Some fresh lemon zest, about 1/2 teaspoon. All right, now we're gonna add some oil. You want about 1/3 cup of oil. And this is good olive oil. Into the pan it goes. All right, if you're gonna put this in the microwave, about a minute, on the stovetop, 30 seconds to a minute, just until you can smell everything. Oh, it's getting nice and fragrant. All right, into a bowl it goes. Into this flavorful oil, we're gonna add 4 ounces of feta that's nice and crumbled. The feta will mix with that flavorful oil. Oh, this would make cardboard taste good, to tell you the truth. All right, so I'm just gonna let that feta marinate about 1/2 hour in the fridge. All right, so to help the quinoa burgers bind together and take their shape, we're gonna add a little bread. This is 2 slices of sandwich bread, and we're gonna grind it into a paste using, again, the food processor. So we're just gonna tear the bread into pieces. Give it a little head start for the food processor. Now I'm just gonna pulse the bread on its own, make some good breadcrumbs. Ooh, that looks good, nice and even. Now we're gonna add an egg and a yolk. This is just a good binder for the patties. And some lemon zest. Another 1/2 teaspoon of lemon zest. I like grating it right into the food processor, nice and fresh. That looks pretty good. All right, now we're just gonna buzz this until it makes a nice even paste. All right, that's pretty good. That paste will work itself really evenly into the patties and be a nice binder. All right, so now let's talk about the flavorings. We have some baby spinach. This is 2 ounces of baby spinach. And we're just gonna give it a quick chop. That way you'll get some pieces in the patties. Don't want any big stringy pieces in the burgers. All right, that looks pretty good. Into a nice big mixing bowl. Now for the sun-dried tomatoes. Want about 1/4 cup of sun-dried tomatoes. That's about 5 or 6 all in, depending on their size. Now, because they're packed in oily, they're a little slippery, obviously. So we're just gonna pat them dry with paper towels, just so the knife doesn't slip around too much. There we go. Let's give them a quick chop. Yeah, these are very slippery, so watch your fingertips when you're cutting these suckers. All right, run the knife back through, make sure there's no big hunks. All right, into the bowl. Last few things here, a little bit of lemon juice, about 2 teaspoons. 1, 2, that looks pretty good. All right, now for some Parmesan. Not some Parmesan, a good amount of Parmesan. That is a cup of finely grated Parmesan. And again, I used that rasp style grater to get nice fine shreds that will melt really nicely into the patties. Here is our egg and bread paste going right into the bowl. All right, that looks pretty good. Last but not least, the quinoa that's been patiently sitting over here on the stove. You can see it's still pretty hot, but that's a good thing because we're gonna stir it in with all these ingredients and it'll make a nice mixture that sticks together. So into the bowl goes the warm quinoa. All right, and we're just gonna mix this all together till it's nice and cohesive and everything's evenly distributed. You can see it's sticking together really nicely. That is a good sign that you'll have patties that won't break apart on you as you cook them. All right, looks pretty well mixed. Now, I've made these enough times over the years to know that this mixture is really sticky. And in fact, using gloves is the way to go. I don't pull gloves out a lot. My husband likes using gloves a lot if he's peeling peppers, making meatballs, you name it. But for me, pretty much this is the only task where I'll pull the gloves out. All right, so we're gonna make 4 patties. So you want these patties to be nice and round, about 3/4 of an inch thick. Now the other thing is you can make these well ahead of time. They'll hold in the fridge easily for a day before cooking, and they freeze really well too. All right. Now these need to firm up in the fridge for at least 30 minutes before you start cooking them. But as I said before, you can make these easily a day ahead. All right, so just gonna cover these with plastic wrap. All right, these are off to the fridge, and then I'll make the potato salad.
We'll get you right back to the video. Check out Cook's Country's newest book, The Complete Cook's Country TV Show Cookbook.
Over 16 seasons and more than 600 recipes are condensed into this cookbook, jam-packed with every recipe we feature on the show, plus stories, tips, and reviews.
Go on the road with Cook's Country and tour the U.S. through food. Get inspired by dishes from restaurants, regions, and chefs all over America.
All in this one convenient cookbook.
To order your copy of the Complete Cook's Country TV Show Cookbook, scan the QR code or visit cookscountry.com to continue your Cook's Country journey.
All right, time to make the potato salad. Now, I grew up with my Oma's potato salad, which was a German-style potato salad, but it didn't have any bacon in it. It was just warm red potatoes that was in a vinaigrette. And I'm gonna make a riff on that today, but I'm gonna swap some sweet potatoes in for some of the red potatoes because they're just nice and healthy and I love their color. So this is 2 pounds of sweet potatoes. When you peel them, you wanna go through that stiff, tough outer skin and through that light colored flesh until you get to the nice bright colored flesh. Now we're just gonna cut the potatoes into nice big pieces, about 3/4 of an inch. So what I like to do is cut the potato in half first, and it gives you a nice flat side to work with because these potatoes can be a little tough to cut through. And we're gonna cut it into 3/4 inch strips. There we go. Then cut it into nice big chunks. Some bigger, some smaller, it's all good. All right, I'm gonna put them right into the pot that we're cooking in, nice big Dutch oven. All right. Now for the red potatoes. These are beautiful little red potatoes, just 1 pound of those. And all I'm gonna do is cut these down into similar sizes. Depends how big the potato is, how much we cut it. This little guy, I'll just go in half. The bigger ones, I'll cut into quarters. Well, that could be 1/4. This monster, I might cut him down into a bit more. He'll go into eighths. All right, last few potatoes here. All right, into the same pot they go because the red potatoes and the sweet potatoes can cook at the same time. Right into the pot. All right, now we're gonna season these potatoes with salt. This is 2 tablespoons of salt. All right, now to add some water. All right, so I'm just adding enough water to cover the potatoes by about 1 inch. And you want to use cold water here, not warm water. That looks pretty good. Onto the stove. All right, on the stove it goes. I'm gonna bring it to a boil. Then when it's boiling, reduce it down to a simmer and let it cook until those potatoes are tender. It takes about 8 minutes. In the meantime, let's make the dressing for the salad. This is a good generic dressing for any sort of potato salad or even a pasta salad because it's really vinegary. It tastes good on starchy things. And it starts with apple cider vinegar. You want 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. All right, to that we're gonna add some whole grain mustard. That's 3 tablespoons. Whole grain mustard, another favorite flavor of my mother's. A little bit of sweetness, some honey, 2 tablespoons of honey. So that's some good local honey. I grew up having local honey in the cupboard because we have a family full of allergies and local honey is good for allergies. And so I would have a little honey bear. And even as a kid, I could have a little swig from the honey bear if I was feeling a little stuffy. All right, last but not least, a little bit of hot sauce. My mother doesn't love spicy food, but this is wonderful homemade hot sauce that has a little carrot in it. Just a little bit of heat tastes great on the potato salad. So just a tablespoon of hot sauce. All right, whisk this together. Now we're just gonna add the olive oil, about 1/2 cup of olive oil. I'm just gonna whisk this in slowly. With all that honey and mustard, this will make a really nice emulsion. All right, that is the dressing for the potato salad. Just gonna set this aside for when the potatoes are good and done. And now I'm gonna make something pretty special for my mother. I'm gonna make an infused water, which is just water with some flavorings. So it'll be an apple lemon dill water. So I'm just gonna take a lemon, I'm gonna slice half of it nice and thin. Actually, I'm gonna slice the whole thing. Only half goes in this portion. I'll save the other slices for garnish for later. There we go. I'll save these for later. All right, into a nice big liquid measuring cup this goes. Now I'm also gonna add an apple. Now green apple tastes great here because it has that hallmark bitter, slightly bitter flavor, slightly sour flavor, but you can use any kind of apple you have on hand. I'm gonna grate it using the large holes of box grater right into the liquid measure. The skins are fine, they add a little more flavor and some color. All right, now I'm gonna add some fresh dill, about 1/4 cup of dill. You don't really need to chop it or anything. Put it in there. We're gonna add a cup of water. Now, I'm using fancy bottled water. That's because if you're making an infused water, you should start with good water to begin with. But if you have lovely water out of your tap, which my parents actually do, lovely filtered water, that would taste good too. So we're just gonna add about 1 cup of the water right off the bat, then we're gonna muddle. We're gonna muddle all those flavors into that little bit of water. If you add all the water right now, it just makes a good old mess, and I speak from experience when I say that. Just wanna make sure I get through each lemon. You got muddled, you got muddled. All right, that's pretty good. Now I'm gonna add the rest of this water, so it's 4 cups now, and then I'm gonna let this hang out in the fridge for about 30 minutes, up to an hour. Let it really develop in flavor, and then we're gonna strain out all the solids and add another 4 cups of water. All right, just gonna cover this, get it into the fridge, and it's time to check those potatoes. Those potatoes should be about done. So the water came up to a simmer, I reduced it down, and they've been cooking about 8 minutes. The best way to check the potatoes is with a fork. You should be able to just put a fork right through them as though you were eating, and that's perfect. They're tender, but they're not falling apart. Just right for salad. Now I'm gonna drain out the water. All right, now because we're making potato salad, we're gonna wanna cool these potatoes off before we toss them with the dressing. And to do that, I'm simply gonna spread them out on a rim baking sheet and let them cool for a bit. It is time to cook up the quinoa burgers. So I'm gonna heat up 2 tablespoons of oil in a non-stick pan. And I'm gonna heat up the oil until it's shimmering. And now I've made this mistake a few times of using too high a heat to cook these. You wanna cook them on medium low, otherwise they really will begin to burn a bit. All right, so that's 2 tablespoons of oil. Heating it up, we just want it to be shimmering, and then we're gonna add the patties to the pan. All right, the oil is starting to shimmer. Time to add the quinoa patties. You can see they're nice and firm out of the fridge. All right. Medium-low heat is the way to go, 5 to 7 minutes on each side. While these cook, let's focus our attention on finishing the salad. So those potatoes are still cooling. Now I'm gonna chop some scallions and some apples in the salad. Apples in a potato salad, if you've never had it, it's worth doing. All right, for the scallions, 4 scallions, just gonna chop them thin, trim off the ends, much like I did earlier when I was making the quinoa, slicing the white parts in half. All right, slicing it nice and thin. You can see already in this bowl, I have some baby arugula, about 2 cups of baby arugula. All right, some apples in the salad. Now the recipe calls for them to be peeled, but I love leaving the skins on, and I know my mother will appreciate that. It's healthier with the skins on, especially if the apples are organic. Now, my mother always sends me that top 10 list of fruits and vegetables that are usually high in pesticides or grown with a lot of pesticides. Apples are always on the list. So, these are organic and they're washed. I'm just dicing them into sizes that are similar to the potatoes. All right, into the salad bowl they go. Oh, she's gonna love seeing all these green vegetables. It is so up her alley. Time to fetch those potatoes that have been cooling. Such a colorful salad. And this is a smart move whenever you're making potato salad. Let them cool, spread them out on a rim baking sheet. That way they really retain their shape. All right, now for the dressing. Looks like a lot of dressing, and it would be if this were a green salad, but this is a potato salad. Those potatoes are gonna soak it all up. All right, salad's ready, set that aside. Let's check on those patties. Ooh, they're smelling good. All right, they've been sizzling away over here. Ah, perfect, golden brown. Medium low is the way to go for these because you want them to heat through and cook through because there's the egg in there, but you don't want them to burn. So that's perfect. Turn the heat down a little bit, another 5 to 7 minutes on this side. While those cook, let's finish up this feta that's been marinating. Again, this is for the topping of the burgers. Just gonna add a little bit of fresh parsley, about 3 tablespoons or so. This is that nice flat leaf parsley. It's called Italian flat leaf parsley. It looks different than the curly leaf parsley. They're usually sold side by side at the supermarket. And I've done side by side taste tests of curly versus flat, and there's a difference. The curly has a milder flavor, where the Italian flat leaf parsley has a much stronger flavor. I washed this already, obviously. All right. Into the feta the parsley goes. There we go. Stir that up a bit. Oh, just give me a loaf of bread and this feta and I'd be in heaven. This is the best topping. All right. Now for the infused water. Now what I did is after I let that water sit for about 30 minutes in the fridge, I took out the solids and I strained the water into this lovely pitcher, pressing on those solids to get as much flavor out as I could. And then I added 4 more cups of fresh water. All right. This water is really best served cold. So this has been sitting in the fridge. It's quite chilled. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, now garnish. Garnish in this case isn't just for looks because it gives people a heads up on what they're drinking because obviously this isn't plain water. So starting with the glasses, I'm going to put a little sprig of dill in each glass. I'm going to put some dill into the pitcher itself. Now some lemon into the glass, some lemon in the pitcher, and some apples. Green apples, because obviously we used green apples. I think red apples look pretty too, so I sliced up a red apple just for color, a little sweetness. There we go. That looks good enough. Oh, it is so nice. You get the dill and the apple and the lemon. It is just refreshing. All right, time to check those quinoa patties. Oh, these burgers are perfection. Time to come off the heat. Let me show you what it looks like on the second side here. Let's see how it's nice and golden on the second side. That's what you're looking for. I find that these burgers taste really good on lettuce leaves. It's the crunchiness and the freshness. The crunch of the iceberg is where it's at. All right, now to top with this feta mixture. Oh yeah. Also some pickled red onions. If you don't have pickled red onions in the fridge, time to get some. They are so easy to make, they last forever, and they taste good on every sandwich you can imagine, on eggs, just on a cheese board. All right, so this is a meal my mother is gonna love because everything's bright, everything's colorful, lots of vegetables, lots of greens. This is definitely her kind of meal. Actually, it's my kind of meal too. All right, so going for a patty, nice big heaping side of salad. Oh, it's the crisp outside on the quinoa patties that just take it to another level. You taste the scallions and the sun-dried tomatoes and all that parm with a little bit of feta on top and the pickled red onion. Oh, and you have a little sip of water and it has flavor and it's lovely. Almost feels summery in a way. A little potato salad. I want to get a little bit of arugula, sweet potato, and the apple. That right there, that's the killer fork. It's got everything on it. Whole grain mustard, sweet potato arugula, and the potatoes perfectly cooked. And to follow up a meal like this, we still have that carrot cake to look forward to. All right, it's time for a little something sweet to finish off that meal. Here's the cake that I let cool completely on the wire rack after I took it out of the pan. Here's the frosting I made earlier. Now, as I mentioned, it's not a lot of frosting, it's just enough for the top. This is gonna spread the frosting out. All right, a little more towards this back side. Little zigzags on the top. That's about it in terms of styling for cake for me. And I have some tea over here I picked specially for my mother. It's a jasmine flowering tea. So it comes in a single bulb and it flowers all at once you add the hot water. And the jasmine is such a lovely, delicate floral flavor. It's also a pretty color. All right, now time for a piece of cake. I'm gonna take an end piece. I'm not a big fan of overly sweet cakes, so this one is right up my alley. It has the tang from the yogurt, it has that heartiness from the wheat flour, and of course the carrots. Delicious with a little sip of tea. Perfect ending to a good meal that I know my mother's gonna love. See you next time. If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?